Hello, here we are. Surprise. It always feels like a surprise when we're suddenly here.
Boom.
So, this is our first episode of a as yet unnamed talk show version of our Twitch stream. So, in our other Twitch stream, we play Protospiel Tested. It's a playthrough. We're playing games. That's one of the major things we do at Protospiel Online. But one of the other things we do is a channel called Coffee Talk, where you can go between games to just talk with each other. So, this episode is going to be more like what it feels like to be in Coffee Talk, where we can talk about things between games. And we haven't named it yet, so we also want maybe some input from our audience on what name makes sense, what feels like it works for this. And I'm joined by my two new co-hosts, Jay Little and Michael Wostbrock. And let me kind of introduce who they are and kind of why I'm excited that we have this lineup of the three of us, because we have a wide range of experience. So we'll start with Jay. Jay has the distinction of being one of the first designers whose game I played at a Protospiel. It was 3 Years of War in 2015. And what's funny is that Jay put this in front of my husband and I. Maybe one other person was playing with us. I can't remember now. Maybe it was Nancy, but and said, I made this last week. We were like, are you kidding me? Because it had so many pieces and cards and everything. And he was one of the first people that just made us feel really welcome and appreciated for play testing. And even though we weren't in the game designer community or anything like that, we were very welcome and had a great time talking to Jay. And my husband doesn't even really like play testing that much. He doesn't like playing broken things, but he wants to go to Protospiel when he knows Jay will be there because he wants to see you. So that's always very sweet. And Michael was never in the designer community before the pandemic, and the first time I met him was at Protospiel Online. So he's a newer designer, and I'm kind of in the middle. I don't even define myself as a game designer. I'm more of an experience designer, an event coordinator, that sort of thing that uses gamified parts to make the experience more interesting. Not so much a tabletop designer, but we've got a very seasoned tabletop designer with Jay, who actually teaches game design at Stout. Am I saying it right?
Yep, UW Stout in Menominee,
So
Wisconsin.
And is the designer of X-Wing, which many people have heard of, and is so humble about it. A lot of people don't even realize that's who you are when they meet you. And Michael's just getting started. So we want to talk today about brainstorming what we want to talk about, what our audience wants us to talk about with regard to weekly topics that we could just cover to help educate and get people ready to attend Protospiel, or help people even if they're not attending Protospiel, that sort of thing. So why don't you kind of tell me, Jay, what are you thinking you hope can come out of helping with this program?
Well, what I find so interesting is I get to enjoy the tabletop hobby gaming industry from a wide number of perspectives. I teach tabletop game design and video game design. I am a tabletop designer and a role-playing game designer, but I'm also just a big fan and gamer. So being able to look at games from a number of different perspectives is always interesting to me. And to be able to talk to them, it feels like you can talk to anybody about games. You just have to find out what it is that you're trying to learn from them, or what it is they're trying to learn from you. And I'm a firm believer that there is a game out there for everyone, and anything that you can learn from game design, you can apply to any other discipline, any other aspect. So I'm just excited to be able to talk about games and view it from different perspectives. So if, Heather has a really interesting view from a designer, producer sort of perspective, then I can look at that from a hobbyist perspective. But being able to listen to and contribute from all those different persona, as I call it, my students, is really, really exciting to me.
Okay, cool. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, I think this is going to be so much fun, because it's one of the things we've talked about doing in this time is discussing different game mechanics or aspect specifics to games. And here in this stream already, we have the professor, and then I don't know how you would define your role in this, Heather, because you are connected to everything while also not being, like you said, a technical designer yourself. But for sure, we have me, the student. So I'm here kind of with chat to ask questions and learn along the way. I'm also a lifelong player of all kinds of games. I find it's just so much fun, and so many things are more enjoyable to do if you can find the fun or the game inside of them. And so I approach a lot of life that way. And I'm excited to learn the actual terms and the specifics and the technical stuff behind a lot of the things that I've played with my whole life. Like learning, I remember learning not too terribly long ago, like 5-6 years ago, the name for worker placement, even though I had been placing workers for much longer. And so hopefully a lot of people can kind of join me on that journey here, asking questions about the history of things and what defines a specific mechanic and what interesting ways can it be used. And yeah.
I heard somebody say for a long time they heard the term, but they thought it was called work replacement.
Work replacement.
Or something like that.
Sure.
Just because he only heard it out loud. Yeah, and that's something that I think we all three of us have in common is just we're avid game players, for sure.
Yeah.
I also have a focus on wanting to evangelize the play of games. So the events that I do run, I used to, before the pandemic, have something at my house called Dinner and a Game, where the idea was that, we'd have dinner and then we'd play games after. And we wouldn't just play games, we'd also talk to each other and be humans together first. And so we would get to really know the people that we were playing games with, not just their play style. We'd know about their life and maybe some of their problems in their life and be able to support each other and do life together, right? And so I know a lot about the way people respond when they're new to games. I have a big heart for people who don't already understand how to play games. And it's the downside of it is that it can be time consuming to bring one new person in at a time. Basically, when you have this open group of people where it can be any range, and that's really what I see, especially Protospiel Online, but I think greater Protospiel is this, whether or not people realize it. I think it might feel intimidating to a lot of people, but to me, it's the best place to come when you're brand new. And we like to see seasoned people keep coming back to it, right?
Well, what's
So
really
it's
interesting
one
is
of those range situations, where there's a new person that's always needing, if you have the door always open for the new person, they're always needing training. And so everybody who's more advanced kind of has to slow down for them, and how to navigate that can be a tough thing. Yeah.
But I'd also point out that conventions just play such a huge role in the development and growth of this industry. And people may have heard of Gen Con and Origins and some of the larger ones, but there are so many regional conventions that if you're near any type of metro area, probably within a 90-minute drive at the furthest, there is some sort of convention related to games, pop culture, science fiction, whatever it might be, that has some slice of gaming to it nearby. And just to talk about conventions a little bit, I go to a lot of conventions. Before the pandemic, I would usually go to 6 to 8 conventions a year as a guest and give talks, and then just sit down and game with people or hear their pitches and things like that. But I also founded a convention down in St. Louis called Geekway to the West. So some people might be familiar with that, where it started out with 17 people in my basement, and over the years it grew and grew and grew till it's about 3,500 people now in St. Louis that just get together. And what's so great about this is gaming is one of the surefire ways, in my experience, to make lifelong friends. So I have met people from Gen Con or from the first Geekway to the West 18 years ago now that I'm still really, really good friends with. And Heather, if you had to guess, how long have we known each other now?
Well, that was I remember it was 2015 Protospiel when I met you.
So yeah,
Madison.
7 years ago. But it's something that I always looked forward to whenever we're at a convention together, being able to look across the room and see who I know there and who I haven't met yet. So it's great to be able to touch base and catch up with Heather and Will, and also find out, ooh, look, there's so many cool games. There's so many neat people here. I can't wait to see how this weekend, kind of evolves.
Oh, and it's like a really easy way to introduce friends to friends too. Like, oh, Jay's here, and so is asking me to play a game with them. So I'm going to invite Jay to play their game, and then I'm going to get to spend time with Jay and make this new friend at the same time. It's perfect.
So if you want to make friends, or you like to make friends, or you like to play games, or you want to learn how to make games, this is the stream and the place for you. Come connect with us at Protospiel. Right. It is honestly, it is a wonderful place to connect and meet with people, and that is a intentional focus of Protospiel, both as a convention and as a stream and as a community, whether that's on Discord or Facebook or anywhere else. It puts people first and making connections between people first, which is one of the things that pulled me into it. Yeah, people make the play test. She's got it's right there on the shirt. It's going to be. I'll have a sticker for that soon here on the way.
Yeah, I think I got Michael won a prize in our live stream, the 2 sticker pack, and yeah. I think I just saw the notification that it came out to you, so it should be there any day.
So do we want to talk about?
I was just going to say that what's interesting about Protospiel compared to a lot of other conventions is I was going to say that it's judgment free, but I think a better way of saying it is it's so incredibly supportive. There is judgment because we're playtesting and we're giving feedback, but we're giving feedback in conversation form. It's not just ticking boxes necessarily. It's not just saying, oh, I didn't like this, but you're able to sit down and have conversations with people and really understand them and why they do things the way that they do. And I think that's one of the things that's so great about the convention. And I was concerned at first going to Protospiel online, as Heather can attest. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. Oh, I'm a little nervous about this, which in person, no fear of that at all. But being online, I was just like, is it going to feel the same? Am I still going to feel connected to these other people? And that we're all here to just support each other, talk about games, and have the best possible time that we can with what we've got.
Right.
Which is an excellent segue into, I think, what we're doing here today, because this is meant to be a place for support and conversations. And so do we want to talk about what we want to do with this stream and how we want to connect with the audience and what we want to do week to week?
Yeah, and I do have to admit that there's some things that I need to learn about Twitch still, because yay, we just became Twitch affiliate last week.
Woohoo.
And there are a lot of things that turns on for us, a lot of features and things that we can do now in the chat, and goodies that we can give our audience that I don't understand how they work yet. So we can definitely be talking about that. I know one of the things is that we can allow a way of polling. So we can say this or that, and audience members can use something called a cheer feature. I got to figure out how to set it up and make sure it's all working, but we have that option to do something like that. So that could be fun if we can figure out things that people can cheer for, or do polls that way. And something that I have kind of geared up is one thing that we do at Protospiel Online, and this came from our friends at Protospiel Chicago. They created this idea first for the in-person Chicago event, was Protospiel Bingo, which is like it's a meta game where the purpose is talking about the game and each other after the game, and kind of keeping a log of what you played, which is, I think, a storied Protospiel tradition to make a log of who you played with and everything you played. And so this is kind of a built-in way to get people started doing that. You make a bingo card, and this button here on the website has the square definition. So it's organized such that we've got BINGO, the B is theme, then the I is mechanic, etc. So all of these things on the card, I say the rules of bingo are you ask the designer if they think their game is this, that, or the other. And if they agree with you that it is, then it qualifies to fill out that square. But I know a lot of people look at this list, especially if they're new, and they think, what does that mean? And you can opine for a long time about, and sometimes it's not even clearly known. It sort of can be considered a matter of opinion, and you could even debate it.
More than once I have looked at a mechanic and had to go to Google to see, what does this mean? And
not just that, but now, since so many mechanisms that we're familiar with have been used, a lot of people are trying to create hybrids where it's kind of worker placement and kind of tile placement or kind of bidding and this other one. So these are fluid definitions. I mean, some of them have a solid base or some games that you can point to or designer you can point to and say they kind of started this trend, but they're always evolving so that the hobby stays fresh.
So, I mean, this could be a very, very easy, we would have a list for a year of things we could talk about if we always talked about this, or we could have a segment about this if it's not really enough to take up a whole hour. What do you two think about whether or not it would or should take up a whole hour to talk about these things?
I think we'll find out as we go. And so that's with a grain of salt for sure. But the format behind the coffee talks in Produce Deal Online during the quarterly events is that you've got a theme or a topic that anyone joining the conversation, and they can float in and float out just like you would in a stream like this. They aren't necessarily there for the whole time. It's a place to start with questions, but it's not necessarily all that people talk about. And I think that this could work for that. So if we have a theme stream around, I'm looking at what is the small screen on mine, tableau building, which I was very familiar with that mechanic for years, but never had called it by that name until about 2 years ago. I was like, what is a tableau and why am I building it? Oh, it's just laying cards on cards or something like that. I think that as a good conversation starter is a good place to hold, but not like an hour-long explanation, and more of just a jumping point or a gateway point for people to show up and then ask questions around that, and for us to bring in examples. And that's a long-winded way of saying I think it'll cover a long period of time, but it won't be strictly that conversation.
I think examples are super useful, and fun to talk about too. You know,
what's your
especially
favorite?
Like formats where we can bring in your favorite example of that, or a unique example that you've seen of that particular mechanism in play,
or a terrible example.
Well,
the best and the worst.
You learn from both ends of the spectrum there.
You do. Here's how not to, and here's an excellent place to start. And then maybe here's something very creative using this that, like you said, is some kind of interesting hybrid of both. So
I think we should also challenge our audiences too, that perhaps if they're not familiar with that, if our audience is made up of not just players but designers too, is what can you do? What can you think of to work around this? You can do tableau building just by using a poker deck and or index cards and some markers. You don't need to have a big fancy setup. And it's interesting when I hear a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm not really a game designer because my prototype is just hand drawn or something like that. I'm like, no, if you went through the time and emotional investment of putting your game together and you're ready to share it with somebody else, you are a full-fledged designer. And you should be proud of that. And one of the ways you get to do that is by playing around. All of the bits that you have in your house are toys to play with, to design games and experiences and figure out how these things work. So it's one thing to hear us talking about tableau building or worker placement, and it's another thing to be able to have stuff in your hands or using an online platform and dragging and moving and going through the actions. I think that just by going through that, you learn just as much as you might by somebody talking at you about the mechanism or reading the rule book to you.
Yeah. You know what might be fun, or it might be terrible, I'm not sure, is if we did like a challenge every episode that was themed around a mechanic, where one of us had to design a pitch, like a 30-second pitch for a new game idea that used that mechanic. Obviously, it doesn't need to be fleshed out at all. It could be off the rails. It could be a terrible idea, but it was an idea to use that mechanic in some kind of way. I don't know. What do you think about that idea?
I love it. I use Rory's story cubes, if people are familiar. They're dice where instead of numbers or pips on them, they've got pictures on them. And we use a formula to come up with pitches on the fly. So it's a little bit of improv and a little bit of just tapping into the things that you know and pushing into the boundaries of what you don't know yet, but you might want to learn about. So I love coming up with pitches, and I love looking at people's games, and if they're struggling with a way of communicating their idea to somebody else. I love working with them or brainstorming with them different ways that they can do that and attract attention.
Have you seen this thing? So a lot of, as I've just been talking to people in back channels about what our Twitch could be, what we'd like to happen on Twitch, I do hear this a lot. It would be really fun if there was this sort of meta game or whatever, this game that you played on the stream of making a game on the fly somehow. That apparently a lot of people think that that's one of the most interesting things about board game designers is that they have ideas for board games. And so, yeah, I think just when I landed on this page, it gave me something. And then I can just keep hitting this to get new things.
I wonder if you can statically set the mechanic and then roll the other three. And then, so we could set the mechanic to one we wanted and then roll the other three, the theme, victory, and constraint. And then the challenge is one of us has to come up with a rough on the spot pitch that fits that fits those four things. This is the digital version of the dice that Jay was talking about. Is it possible to lock one down? It looks like it is.
I can go to the list of mechanics, but then I don't see a way to make sure that would be this one. So, I mean, I could keep hitting it until we got the one we wanted. But
there were quite a few, I think, that it had in the hopper there.
I have an idea. We could just ignore whatever it says in the mechanics roll and just mentally decide.
Just tape over it.
Yeah, just tape it right there.
Yeah, this is a live play test, everybody. This is the obvious solution.
No, it's so funny because I was
out there and put that on my screen.
I was right there with you. I was like, how do we make it? Oh wait, we don't have to. We can just not.
I could do maybe even really fast here on the fly.
You could screenshot.
It does not even have to be in pretend terms. Like what's our mechanic for today? Well,
we were talking about tableau building. Let's hold that for now. It's not the official today topic, but just as an example.
Right. Okay. So, I could do this before we could talk in the studio before we get started, right?
Right.
But basically, tableau building. Okay. You had to pick one that's hard to spell, Michael.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of vowels in that one.
One of the things I love just about this is you were talking about tableau building. I was thinking about, wouldn't it be cool if there was a game where the tableau was already built and the game is about tableau deconstruction, where you are trying to undo the tableau in the most efficient way or in the way that will leave you with the best remaining resources, buildings,
this is fun. This is what it could be. Like we throw out a mechanism and a couple seed ideas, and of course, like anything, chat can play along. If you want to put in a 4-sentence pitch of your idea for the game, we can read those out as well. Heather can throw any of the ones that people come up with on the screen.
So with the old people deduction, if we scratch that into tableau building, my first thought is you are visiting one of your grandparents and you are trying to find out their hobbies or their stories. So you basically start with a top-down card that represents them in a rocking chair or something like that. And the cards that you have that you're placing around might be an Afghan that they own or a cat in their lap or things like that. And you're like building up all of the memories that this grandparent has built up over their lives. And it could be something that's interpretive where it's more story-based, or it could be something where, if I can get the cat to sit on top of the Afghan while it's on my lap, right? Like there are really, really interesting ways that you can take a look at a lot of these different elements.
Oh, I love it. We're going to have so much fun with this. We definitely need to make this a part of the stream.
There you go.
All right, show us what you have, Heather.
You can do it like this.
Oh, nice.
Snazzy.
Oh yeah, we're ready. We don't know how chat interaction works yet, but we can screenshot things and put them on the overlay.
Right.
Speaking of chat interaction, another idea that we had that we've talked about just briefly is a way to take questions from the chat about the mechanic of the week, about the topic of the week, but also about us as designers and us as individuals, because it is about making connections and about making friends and people. We wanted to take those questions in a fun way. I think we would take those at any point as they came in, but I had this idea for a segment where we would, I think what we talked about, Heather, is I would prepare a few questions and throw them out into chat, and chat could vote on the question they wanted to be asked. So like we might throw 4 questions for us to answer, and you could vote on the one you want us to answer the most. And then, and I'll probably explain this again next week too, you can vote on how long we have to answer that question. 5 seconds, or I think I want to do 30 seconds, but we can try out different durations. And we have to answer for the entire time. So a full 30 seconds or a full 5 seconds. And then lastly, I'll probably have you vote on which host you want to answer, because I think it could get a little dull if all of us went through the answers. Although maybe depending on it, you could have each host answer, or any one of us could volunteer. We can try different things. But
I think everybody answering is like it's interesting because it highlights how different people are. You know what I mean?
Okay,
if we all do it.
And something in your answer might spark something that I want to respond to, right? Mm-hmm. Or Heather might see it from a completely different perspective. So I think it would be valuable.
Maybe chat can answer who has to go first, because that's the real hot seat. If you have to figure out how to stretch a short answer into 30 seconds, or how to condense something like what is a rondelle mechanic into 5 seconds, right? That's the real challenge. And some of the questions probably don't need to be answered 3 times because they are something like that, there is an answer. But the personal questions, for sure, I think would be more interesting. Like, what is your opinion on, or what is your personal favorite? Those are probably better for everyone to answer.
How do you feel about rondelles? Do you think rondelles are an intro level sort of mechanic to teach somebody, or are they a little bit more advanced concept?
And I will look down.
A great one to choose.
I'll look down at you, Jay, in your square, and I'll ask you to tell me what a rondelle is, because I don't. I'm just throwing out words. I don't know what they mean.
So, and I'll be here with my trusty whiteboard, and I'll be drawing things and pointing to them.
I don't want to burn through material, but can you help me define rondelle? Because I understand it has to be. It's connected to a wheel and moving around a circle. I've heard it said that it has to be one direction, or that there's spacing or not spacing.
Has to. Whenever somebody says "has to be" when it comes to game design, it's like it's wrong. Recommended, it's urged, or that's how they've seen it before.
Right.
But all right, to answer your question, honestly, a rondelle is generally circular. You can think about it as the spokes on a wheel in each individual section, or the classic Trivial Pursuit pie with all of the different wedges. And each wedge corresponds to a different action that you can perform. And you have a piece like a meeple or a pawn that is on a particular space. And then on your turn, you get to advance your pawn. It might be a number of spaces equal to your position in the game, or equal to the number of resources that you have, the roll of the die, whatever, but you're advancing along there, and you're trying to select the next action in sequence that will benefit you this turn, but you always have to keep an eye on the following turn to position yourself. What's really interesting is sometimes rondelles play mutually exclusive spaces. So if I take a space that Michael wanted, too bad. Michael has to choose a different one. He will either skip that space or shake his fist at me and have to figure out something else to do on the turn. But it's a really interesting way of offering a narrowed window of option selection, but you're able to see in advance what the next round might be, so that you can start to plan with imperfect information, but still knowing the range of possibilities that you might have to play with.
Okay. So if I understand the mechanic correctly, one of the key things is that it's usually circular, but some kind of loop where you will continue to get the same options over time. And another key mechanic is that your options are limited by your current position. So which things you can choose is related not to how much money you have or your economy or how many workers you have, but where you are on the board, on the map, the distance from where you currently are to the action you want. That is what limits your choices, as opposed to other mechanics where your limitation has something to do with what you can afford or some other rule in the game. Is that a fair way to distinguish it from other selection mechanics?
I think it's certainly one way to define it or work on it. I've also seen people working on rondels that are more like Mobius strips that have a fork or a branch where you're going to be going down the build and construction path, or you're going to be going through the resource development path. But you, at different points during your movement through this, you might have the opportunity to shift lanes, as it were, to choose a different type of action. What's also interesting is you compare this with other things like a first come, first served bonus. For example, if raising armies is one of the actions, whoever gets there first gets a bonus and locks down that bonus for as long as they occupy that space of the wedge there. It doesn't mean that I can't go there, but if Heather had landed there first and already took the bonus, I've got to decide, do I want to land on that same space and take the action without the bonus, or do I want to land on a space that hasn't been occupied yet and get the premium version of that action, the bonus that's going to give me an extra dollar, or let me roll an extra die, or let me draw an extra card, things like that. But yeah, I really think rondels are interesting as a player, but also from a designer. Are there certain actions that are so vital to the game that maybe they occupy more than one wedge of the rondel because there's something that people need to do? Like if people aren't moving in a combat style risk sort of map, then things get locked down. So there might be options that you have to creatively think about, how often do I want people to be doing this, or at least considering this action?
That's really interesting. I'm gonna learn so much on Thursdays. Let's put a lid on it. Let's seal that off. We have to. That's just a taste. That's just a taste for the audience. We can't give away that for free. We'll come back for the full rondel episode. But that's so good.
Yeah, and following up with that, I think what's fun to talk about. Well, yeah, see, Jay can give this really detailed explanation of sort of academically what it means, and lots of just examples without mentioning the name of the game, just examples of things that could happen in a game. And then I often can think of examples of games that I've played that are rondel that I like. And sometimes I know it's rondel, but I haven't played it myself. So something like, I'm pretty sure Zolkin is a majorly fancy rondel, but I haven't played it yet. Am I correct, Jay?
That's a great question, because with all of the games out there, I can't always think of each one off the top of my head, but Imperial and TK, I think, both use rondels. And as a special bonus, if we know what topic we're going to talk about ahead of time,
right,
we can all curate through our collections and bring examples that we can share. I've got about 3,500 board games, and they're spread out between 6 rooms.
Wow.
So it's hard to just go grab things on the fly. It's usually a lot easier for me to go, I want to take this one, and I want to be able to show this one. And that one's different, so let's share that one as well.
Well, and we can show them on, if they exist on BGA or Tabletopia, we can also have those queued up. And another thing that I actually think is a really it's not our asset, but it's a really useful asset for anybody studying board game design, is Board Game Geek. And like opening the page of the game, looking at what are all the mechanics that were labeled on this game. Like this is if I click Rondel, I'll get a list of possible games, but I'll open it and I'll find this is Rondel and Tableau Builder or whatever, and see different mixes.
Yep. Another related idea that I think we talked about prior to this was, it's much shorter than the Board Game Geek list of games, but there is a historical list of all of the games that have been tested at Protosville Online. And collectively, if we can think back what we've play tested and what's there, and we can go looking through it, We might be able to find examples of games that have been tested and might be playable at a future protospiel that use this mechanic. And I think it'll be interesting to look at stuff that designers in this community have made, and possibly some interesting ways that they've leveraged those mechanics. I don't remember, Heather, have we historically tagged games with mechanics? Is that an option?
I
So
give
that we
it as
could
an option,
search
and
that?
I give it as an option, and I don't require it. So this is a example of one that's in April, and this person did decide to fill it out all the way. So what I tell people is, a lot of people want to skip it because they say, this form is super long. I want to just get this up and move on with my life. So I let them skip this part if they want. But I say, if you want to let people find you to fill out their bingo card, this is a good reason to fill this out. And specifically, I only give the options of what's on the bingo card. So it would maybe not go as far as everything that's on Board Game Geek or everything that's in Board Game Randomizer. We could use what we have put on the bingo card,
Yeah.
What's valuable about this too is proto-spiel and prototyping is not just about playing the game, it's about the conversation. So if I look at this and I see family word game, I love word games. Now, I might not have the time, or I might have already committed to something else, and I don't have a chance to stop and play your game. But if you've at least shared that information that it's a word game, I'm going to want to circle back around and talk about that at some point. Learn a little bit more about that.
Or at least, check. Even if I don't get to play test your game, just meet you and let you know that I'm excited about your idea. Now, I do have to admit that our website is not quite functioning on all cylinders. There's some bugs that I need to work out, but the idea is that you can click on any of these things. This is how it's intended to work, is that you could click on family. You see it's there in the URL. And this would be a list of everything that's ever been posted on Protospiel Online that is family weight. Right now, it's not the whole list. It's only recent things because there's a bug, right? But yeah, once it gets fixed, which it needs to get fixed anyway, we can see anytime we talk about a mechanic, we can look at all of them that have been put on our website. This requires that people tagged it as that mechanic, and that not everybody who brings a prototype to Protospiel Online puts it on the website, but I want them to. I want them to do it more. And so the fact that you could get featured on our stream by putting it into the website, I think would be a good reason to do this during the stream. But also, what works a little bit better now is I have the quick look. This is broken into event by event. And you can filter on, it takes a second to load, on the different things. I don't know if it's taking an extra second to load because I'm streaming right now or something like that. But yeah, come on, there you are. Come along now, come along. Okay, yeah, there's filters for things like where the mechanic is something, right? So that's probably, that's not one. This is for finding each other. And I don't think because not everybody puts the mechanic, that's not one of the options. Sorry, folks. This was a dead end.
Well, Heather, while you're digging down for that, let me kind of reiterate what we're talking about here. We've got a few new people in chat. We're talking about what we want this experience to be, or maybe more importantly, what you want this experience to be, chat. The ideas we have is to bring a weekly topic, something centered around game design, probably a mechanic that could be a conversation starter, similar to the Protospiel coffee talks that we have. And some of the ideas we already have for this stream are to do a fast pitch challenge where one of us has to come up with a game design based on randomized events and the mechanic of the week. We've talked about some chat questions where you get to vote on specific questions, game design or personal get to know questions that I'll curate ahead of time for us to answer with a specific fun time limits. What else? I think there was some third thing, but the more important question is, what do you want? What would be fun for you? Does anyone have any ideas for things you'd like to see, or what you would want this time to be?
I mean, we can talk about mechanisms. We can talk about adding one to another and what happens when you do. We can talk about the playtest process that you might take with this particular type of game, because not every game gets playtested the same way. What sort of feedback should I solicit or look for when I am designing a game like this? As a player, how can I get better at using this mechanism? How can I learn this sort of game? There are a lot of really interesting ways to view games as a designer, as a player, hobbyist, instructor, whatever it might be. There are a lot of different ways that we can attack these topics. Yeah, like tableau building, what was really interesting as well, Michael, when you were talking about it, is it made me start to wonder, what would I do for playtesting for that? What would I look for myself to internally verify that, yes, this is at the next stage where I'm willing to share it with somebody else then? And what would it take for me within my close circle before I'm willing to send it out to the blind playtesting, as we call it, when people don't have you there to read the rules or answer questions directly, but they need to have everything with them and play the game without someone holding their hand. So it's really interesting looking at these mechanisms, wondering, what would I do with that and how would I work with that? And if I had certain constraints, that's what I thought was interesting with that Board Gameizer website, is a constraint as well. Sometimes you have the entire world to design with, and sometimes it's the entire world except no more than 90 cards and no plastic. Right. So it's interesting that sometimes a physical limitation will make you think about something thematically differently, or the mechanisms that you're going to use differently.
So if you have ideas for what you would want to see us talk about as well, you can just put them in the chat.
Yeah, and we want to know who you are.
Yeah.
You've come and gone. Some people have, I've seen the numbers go up and drift away too. So I don't know who's still with us. But we don't know you're here if you don't say anything in chat. Oh, there may be, this is something too about chat that it may, haha, you've revealed yourself. It's Zoe. Zoe, can you tell me, did you have to verify your account to comment? Did you have to be a verified account? Because it is a big hurdle, but it might be an important safety thing for us to have turned on. So it's kind of a plus and minus to that. But apparently there have been like raids of channels that involve minorities or support minorities that are abusive and awful. So having to like verify with your phone number or whatever helps prevent that, but it also makes it harder for everyone to participate in chat.
I had that issue as well a few weeks ago. Being rated sounds terrible, but it also sounds kind of like a badge of honor. It means we're doing the right thing if certain groups of people target you.
Well, raid is actually a happy good thing that's like planned, and it's a favor that you're doing for each other. But
right.
Like hate rated, it's more
hate,
like
hate raid would be bad. Yes.
Yeah.
I just mean if bad people are targeting you, then you're doing what is the expression, right? It's there. If you're doing the right thing, then you're going to make some enemies, something along those lines. But yeah, no, right. we don't want to invite trolls. So that might be something you want to look into as far as how accessible is it for people to join in chat, especially if they this is their first time in a Protospiel online stream and they are newer to Twitch.
Yeah, and I think maybe possibly we could do something where on our background it has an instruction running, like, hey, get involved in chat, like do such and such to get in chat. Tell us you're here. So it's just continually telling them that while we're talking, so we don't have to stop and give an instruction all the time. That might be a good idea.
Yeah. Do we want to go ahead, Jay?
I was just going to say, I'm pretty sure the two of you would agree, but I'm not going to speak directly for you. But we're not doing games after dark, right? This isn't the after dark edition. So PG-13, probably topics, language, and discussion. Would that be appropriate so that people know what they're getting into and can feel comfortable in the space?
Yeah, I think. Well, and I think I guess I shouldn't speak for Michael either, but I think that's kind of our vibe anyway.
I I would abide by whatever the Perdispiel has a very thorough code of conduct because Heather is a very good writer, and so I'd say whatever those guidelines are for a conversation, I would want the same thing. I would want the same thing here. Yeah, I think we should look into the verifying thing a little more because you do want protection mechanisms, but only if they're actually helpful. And so I don't know if being verified is a barrier for bad people coming in to do something wrong or not. If it is, it's probably a good idea. You've done more research than I have recently into creating Twitch content and streaming, but I don't want to dissuade people from commenting because it's hard to connect.
It stops bots for sure.
Yes, that's a good point.
And an overwhelming bot is a pretty effective way to ruin somebody's stream and make it really uncomfortable for people. So, and I think as affiliates, there are certain things that can happen that could get us kicked out. I don't think it's really that common for the things to happen, but just allowing something that's really not safe for work to show up on our channel could get us in trouble.
Yeah. Well, then I like your idea of just streamlining that process as we see what it takes for people to get verified, especially people that might be newer to Twitch, so that it's not hard for them to do. And I think maybe looking at it versus computer versus mobile, because I had issues with mobile as well, but I eventually got to go through. Do we want to play a test round of the game that I don't have a name for yet, where people pick questions for us?
Maybe. We have 2 people besides ourselves, I think, with us right now. So reveal yourself, other person that isn't Zoe. We need to know you're here and you hear us before we start playing a game with you. But
otherwise, it can just be Zoe says, and we have to do whatever Zoe says.
That's what we'll call the game. Zoe says.
Yeah, touch your nose.
Oh. Well, and it might be a game of that today.
It could be useful just for us too to kind of understand. This is a play test. This is a play test for a new game.
Tell us a little bit about your game.
First you have to do the pitch.
By the way, this is my background for game design. Like I have played technical Euro games. I own Gloomhaven and have actually played it many times. So I am into the deep, but like my game design history was making up silly games at camps and for kids and goofy stuff at parties or whatever. So like I love that part of gameplay where it's not just about winning, but just about entertaining people and having a good time. So this is in a way a game pitch. All right, so this is the idea, Zoe and unnamed person in chat. I'm going to post 4 questions, and this will let us test out some features in chat. I'm going to post 4 questions in chat, and we will let chat, be it one person or 1,000, vote on the question that they want to see most. And the question with the most votes will get asked to all of our hosts. Or if it's like a only answer at once question, we'll probably direct it to one person. The catch is...
Zoe's got a lot of sway here.
Yes, a lot of leverage. And you can't leave for the next 1 minute or this will bomb. So we vote on the question, and then after we've selected a question, chat will vote on the duration of our answer. Do we have to answer for 5 seconds or for 30 seconds? And we'll go from there. All right, so here are a list of questions. I probably need to post each one individually so that you can vote on each one individually.
Okay, so you're gonna, as yourself, you're gonna post in Twitch, and then I can put them up on the screen so people can see them.
Yes,
later.
I'll do that. And if I need to set up a separate account later, but I am Wostbrock in Twitch chat, and I am putting 4 things here. And I saw as I was posting for the first time today that there is a quick chat guideline from Brainstorm Online on the kind of conduct we expect, which I think is good and a good place to communicate the mood of the room that you were talking about earlier, Danny. All right, so here are 4 questions, and chat and or Zoe, let's see if we can vote on the question you want to ask us the most. And then after we selected one, we'll pick how long we have to answer.
You have 5 minutes to talk about what you had for breakfast.
See, that's the point. It can be ridiculous on either end. But I think we're going to do 5 seconds and 30 seconds for the options here.
Yeah, well, if 30 seconds is supposed to be, it's hard to fill that time. I don't think it's an actual challenge given the people that are here.
You're probably right. But it is a good way to get to know someone. Like, if you want to know a little bit about I like food because I like games and it connects you to people. Oh, Zoe says, how do you vote? Heather, how does Zoe vote? This is the test.
That's something that we need to learn. Eventually, we could use the cheering system, but I think I need to learn how to turn it on and set it up for y'all. But you can, by watching us, if I'm not mistaken, the time that you spend watching us, you start to earn channel points. I think I've turned that on, but I'm still learning big time. So, and then you can use those channel points to vote by cheering.
That you could thumb.
No, it's not like that. I don't think.
It's an earned currency. I don't watch a lot of Twitch. I watch a lot of streams of Twitch on YouTube. So I don't interact with chat, but I see people interacting with chat. And it's a currency that you earn over time that rewards people for being involved members by allowing them to communicate and chat a new way. Yeah, so I've got 400 channel points, and there's a button that says click to claim a bonus to the right of that, Zoe. Which just gave me more channel points. That's not what I thought it would do.
It's so easy.
Yeah, so this is a good play test, bring out how people can interact. So we want to figure out how people can spend those, Heather, so we can do that.
Right. I think I have to actually make in the Twitch dashboard somehow a way for you to spend it. And I probably, from the way things look, so far I've just used Restream only to use any feature of the stream, but I'll probably have to also have Twitch open to get this to work, most likely. But I have to. They have something. Twitch is so complicated. Being a creator and especially an affiliate on Twitch is so complicated that they have something they make called Twitch 101 that I need to go to my professor for Twitch 101 and find out.
We've identified something to change in our game already, which is to get the cheering system to work. But let's finish it up so that we actually play the game before our time runs out. Zoe, just put in the chat the question you want, and then tell me 5 seconds, or we'll say 1 minute for how long you want the answer to be, and then we'll select someone to give an answer.
I feel like the Jeopardy music should be playing.
Oh yeah, where's our lo-fi jazz that's usually in the background, Heather?
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I forgot all about that. Let me add some.
All right. While you're pulling that up, Zoe asks, what does your favorite game say about you? 1 minute. I don't know if we have time for each of us to go through. I'll leave that up to Heather because it's your schedule. But as the question asker, I'm gonna funnel that to Jay first, and then Heather too if we have got time. Jay, you have 1 minute and you have to fill it.
All right.
I was gonna have a timer, Heather, can you pull up a timer?
Someday I can if I make a background that has it.
Eventually.
Maybe. What about I know how I can do it. Just a second.
Okay. I can hold up my phone, but I'm thinking you could go to like a website and put that on the side.
Yeah. That's what I'm doing. Let me get it.
All right. Heather, let me see 60 seconds on the clock.
Just a second.
And then we're gonna have, Jay is primed and ready to go.
Choose length, 1 minute, and let me show it to you. Just a second.
It's good. We're working all these bugs out.
The biggest person, and you can, I think, still see it if I go like this, right?
Yep.
You can see it ticking. Okay, go.
All right. Oh, and it has started. So my favorite game is a game called Cosmic Encounter, designed primarily by Peter Olatka. It was designed in the late 70s. It is a really fun game where everybody plays an alien who can break one rule of the game. And you are working both with and against each other because it's a race for the first person to establish 5 colonies outside of their own system. Well, in order to establish one of these colonies, you generally need somebody else's help. But at some point in the game, you have to be able to backstab the other players. So it is a really fraught game of lying to each other, clever, subtle diplomacy, knowing when to stab the back, which is interesting because I'm not that kind of person in real life. So this game allows me to let off some steam and play in a way that is very unlike my normal personality.
Yep, and that's time. Gotta cut it right there.
Dang it.
It bears my soul to the universe.
That's great.
Oh my gosh. That timer is so evil. I still haven't figured out how to get this thing to work in a way that isn't super annoying like that. Okay. I gotta hit the right button.
Well, Jay, thank you for sharing. I've never heard of that game. That's awesome. And I think we're close to out of time. Heather, do you want to take that question as well, or do you want to just do some wrap-up stuff here?
I can take it. Yeah, it's just a 1-minute thing. So.
All right,
sure.
Go for it.
Just a second. Start, resume. Got it. Okay. I hate choosing favorite anything, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is Cartographers. And I think it's my favorite game. And what it says about me is that I like to bring people in. I like to include people because Cartographers, you can play it with any number of people. And it's pretty welcoming and easy to learn from the beginning. And it has a little bit of gotcha where sometimes you draw, it's a flip and fill, right? So you're drawing cards and then you're writing Tetris shapes onto a map. So it also lets you draw, and that also is something that has been like a lifelong thing for me, is that since I've been a small child, I've painted. That thing back there is something that I painted. If you can see those cardinals, I painted that. So you get to draw, and you could use colored pencils if you want in person, and so it has that aspect, but mostly it's because any number of people can be included that it is my favorite, and that is kind of how I am as a gamer.
And
so.
time. Yeah. 60 seconds goes by fast with that kind of question. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine trying to answer that in 5 seconds.
I forgot to make myself big while I was talking. Sorry about that. Too many buttons to push. You could hear me though.
You're driving a lot. All right.
Well, kind of as a takeaway from this, I feel like it does feel like a mechanic is the central focus. Makes a lot of sense. And then there's a lot of different segments we could do around that. And that seems fun and interesting. And then this little game to close, which hopefully by then, I expect that by the end, or maybe by about 10 minutes before the end, we would have the biggest audience that we were going to have the whole time. So that's the part that we've figured out is clearly a game we can play with the audience. And then the rest of the time, it's just we would want them to participate in asking follow-up questions, also giving examples of their favorite games, or I like that game. So the only possible downside to that idea, and it's not a really very big downside, is that there's a limit to how many mechanics there are. We'll run out eventually of the ones that are listed on the Protospiel website, at least, if we start with those, right?
The Yahoo Answers problem. But it'll take us a long time to get there.
Yeah, and if we're looking at what we have, there's the section of mechanics, themes, and format are all different things that we could debate and give examples of. So within each one, it's been a long time since I made this bingo game, but there's probably 20 to 30 of each one.
Yeah.
Don't want to sit here and count them right now, but
what's interesting is like something like legacy. Legacy really isn't a mechanism. It's
I have
style
it in format
that you lay over something else. So there are a lot of different things that we can talk about either by themselves or in combination.
Yeah, we could talk about themes and formats, like you said, Heather. Maybe even there could be some opportunities for guest hosts that match one of the different designer bingo options you have. Something meaningful, like where they live or how they identify, or something silly, like today's guest host has a last name that is between A and X. But an opportunity.
Blackout bingo with this live stream.
Yeah, exactly. We can cover it all. I like it. I think every segment should have some excuse to tie back to the bingo squares, whether it's a great connection or a loose one. Let's try and make that stretch.
Interesting. Components are the last category besides designers.
There's a lot to talk about there.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about whether or not we have guests, but I do think it would be nice to have guests because diversity is something that I want to encourage very, very much so. And we're very white. I am female, but we're very white, the three of us. So we can add more diversity into the mix by having guests. And so I like that idea too. Again, the only downside to that is there's extra coordination, but just knowing I at least have the two of you helps it happen every week. And then when possible, we can pop somebody else in. I like that.
Well, it looks like Michael's got to drop. So it was great seeing you again, Michael.
I do. I will see you guys next Thursday.
Yeah. Have a great week. Bye. And
so I can stick around a little bit more, Heather. Why don't you finish what you were talking there about diversity?
Turn them off. Oh yeah. We would need to have more guests to have it though. So I think they could just pop in and fit into whatever the topic was instead of the topic centering around them. They can just come and participate with us in the topic. Feels good to me. That makes it pretty easy to plan. Like we can have our topic calendar way in advance, just know it way in advance. And then and maybe put it out way in advance for people to ask me. Like, hey, I call dibs on being the guest for that one, if they want to.
And a lot of us have contacts. What's so great about this industry is people are generally so they're open with their time. They want to share their information, knowledge, and experience because somebody shared information with them. And they really do support each other in a way that I haven't seen in other industries.
Yeah, I think might be the reason for that might be, my theory anyway, is that board games are about being with people, and getting to share your knowledge is one way of being with people. So
that's an interesting
people
way of
who
looking at it.
Who like board games, they like being with people, you know.
Well, I guess I was looking at this, I have to admit, a little bit from an ego standpoint. As a designer, it's hard sometimes to walk into a game store and look at a game on the shelf and go, that's not one of mine, right? Like I've got games that I still want published, and this got published, and this got published, and this got published. And it kind of weaves into imposter syndrome, feeling like, well, I haven't really done it because it's not up there. But there are all of these people who have experiences different than your own, who want to tell you how they got it through the process, how they were able to hit the home run and publish something, which is no small feat. It is often takes a lot of work and sweat. At the beginning, Heather had mentioned that 3 Years of War I had designed in a week before Protospiel and took it there to play it, and it was signed about 3 months after that. But then it took 2.5 years to actually make and get published and distributed. So not all games go through the same journey. It's really, really interesting. And I need to remind myself of that.
You were also talking about how either you or Michael was saying, maybe before we got on or right at the beginning, about feeling like you don't belong because all you've ever done is just made this one prototype. But making one prototype is a lot of work that a lot of people don't do. And then when you take that and to actually get it to publication is a major feat. So,
and just sharing that prototype, you are sharing part of yourself. You're sharing a little special part of you that invested time, energy, commitment to that. And it can be a little daunting to say, what do you think about this? And take that feedback with an open mind, and why constructive criticism is welcome, but criticism usually doesn't have a place.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Protospiel, right? To me, I've heard other people go, oh, Spiel means game in German. That's why they called it that, right? Well, I don't know. I didn't name it, so I don't know. But I hear Spiel, like we talk about prototypes, like give me the spiel. So, and that is really, it's a lot of talking when you're going to certainly in-person Protospiel. And I have to tell people a lot. They're used to weekly playtest setups where you're given a time slot, like it's very type A, like go, go, go. Okay, bring it along. You said it was going to take this long. Get out of here and let somebody else test. And I'll really try to push for, if the whole point is to have the conversation after the game. If you're really, really worried about time, don't finish the game and leave lots of time to talk, but really just finish the whole conversation. Just finish it and do not apologize or whatever for that. We do ask when people put up their game cards for people to estimate the time, but there's no policing of it. It's just a courtesy of communicating about the wait. But if you get me in a play test, it's probably going to go over because I'm going to make you talk to me afterwards.
Well, what's interesting too is I've played in and had played a number of games that after 15 or 20 minutes, we saw something that did not work the way the designer intended. Mm-hmm. So rather than continue playing something that is not working the way they want, let's talk about what we can do to get it to work the way they do want. And maybe we start it back up and play again, or just talk about, all right, tell me what your dream was behind this game, and let's figure out how to get what you have so far to fulfilling that dream. To me, that's one of the most fulfilling parts of Protospiel. Yes.
And that too is something that I think everybody who's giving feedback should be careful about, is to ask what the designer wants instead of trying to tell them what you wish it was. I try to always, sometimes I do have a perspective, like, for example, this game feels like it's supposed to be a party game, but it's too gamey, right? Is maybe how I feel about it. But I'll ask them, what did you want this to be? Like, what's your vision for this before I say anything? And I might tell them, because I feel this way, but I support you, in the game you want to make. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, too, because when I see a game, I can't help but wonder what I would have done differently with Monopoly, even with Risk, with well-established games. So with a prototype, I think every designer who sits down there at some point looks at it and goes, I think I would have done this instead. And that's absolutely fine. But if that's not what they're looking for, maybe they're not looking for balance with scoring yet, but they want to see how pile placement and worker placement works. Does it function the way that they want? So it's really interesting to not only be respectful and mindful of what it is that they're looking for, but it's okay to have your opinions and go down your own rabbit holes. Sometimes you just need to keep it internal, or keep that notebook with you to jot some ideas down for later.
Yeah, you can make the game. And that's another thing that comes out, I think, a lot of Protospiel is you realize how to give feedback better and take it better by watching other people, and you realize how to design games better by watching other people, or you get ideas, and you find maybe collaborators too. So
no, that's a good point. So I met designer Marcus Ross at a Protospiel, one of the in-person Protospiels, I would have to say 7 or 8 years ago now, probably around the time that you and I met. And we've keep bumping into each other at different conventions here and there. We find out that we've got some shared interests. And then I had the opportunity on a recent project to invite one other designer to come work with me. I'm like, I want to work with Marcus. And it was so cool that, without Protospiel, without these connections, without this communication, a lot of these opportunities just would not happen.
And the hope is that online can be a platform that allows people who can't afford to travel, even if the pandemic wasn't an issue. There's a lot of people who live in other countries or rural areas, or they have a little kid that makes it hard for them to leave their house for a whole weekend. And that's why I didn't create this. If I was going to start it at all, I was not going to let it stop, because I knew it would be really a big loss to the people who were like, I've needed this, So I was pretty committed to keeping it going and not having it just be a Band-Aid for the pandemic. And I'm very happy that you're one of the established people who's willing to participate in it, Jay. Even if it's not quite as much fun and quite as energizing as in person. Or would you say you're an extrovert? Is that fair?
I am in person. I am 1,000% extroverted, but every once in a while, it's too much. I've got social anxiety, like many other people in this industry do, and just every once in a while, it hits the limit, and I just need to go introvert myself into a corner for a while.
That's kind of the neat thing about online too, is you can do that more easily in your own bedroom or whatever. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Turn your
Just
camera off for a little bit if you just need a moment to kind of compose yourself. But that's what's so interesting is like the first time that you were doing this, and I was wondering if I wanted to be involved with Protospiel Online, is I was getting nervous. The pandemic, I think, has changed my general demeanor. As a teacher, I'm big, vivacious there, energetic in person, and it was hard to maintain that energy online for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And it's not the same online with Protospiel. It's not. It's a different kind of energy, and being able to embrace that is what took me some time to do. But once I did, oh man, I had so much fun and got a lot out of it.
I'm glad. Yes, yeah, it's a different vibe. You need to get used to the technology too, and figure out how to get yourself into the flow of it. But it was designed to feel as much as possible is what's good about the talking. Really, the talking and the free flow and the no schedule is what makes, and the even playing field is what makes in-person Protospiel, I think, makes it the way it is, makes it feel the way it is. So that's what we've really tried to stay true to with the online, even if it can't be as light of a lift. In real life, you just walk into a room and sit at a table. Everybody knows how to do that. And there's a little bit more to it with Protospiel Online. But yeah, and it's good to hear that from you, Zoe, about it helps you as a mom, right? Even though I don't think you're living out in the middle of nowhere. I think you live kind of in a populated area, probably in California. Everywhere's populated in California. But yeah, but still, that doesn't mean, even if an airport is close, even if you have the money, that doesn't mean you can be gone for a whole weekend, and that's a no big deal kind of thing, right? So awesome. Well, thank you, Jay. I think we figured it out mostly. I think we're going to need to talk, get our actual outline written offline and everything. But I'm excited to see what we decide to do for next week, and hopefully I'll we'll get into the stream too of announcing it regularly, and everybody will get used to when this happens. And I know there are a couple of our Europe friends who have said that it's basically 9 p.m. or whatever for them is a good time after their kids are in bed. They can participate with us in our afternoon. So fingers crossed that we'll kind of be able to have an international crew here in our afternoon talk. I got to figure out what to call it. Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's going to be a toughie.
Oh, pretty. I'm in SoCal. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I always felt so guilty going to conventions, especially when I worked at Fantasy Flight Games, and I was gone 3-4 times a year because our kids were so young at that point. 5 and 1, 6 and 2, right, as they're growing up, and I'm traveling all the time. Because the fact that I've got such a supportive partner is the reason I get to be a game designer.
Yeah.
I would just be doing it as a hobby myself because I love it, but being able to pursue it with the extra energy and time that it takes often requires that support system around you that aren't necessarily the people that you playtest with. So.
Yeah, and I'm same. Like, I'm able to run Protospiel Online because I have a really supportive partner, so he gets the credit as well. But yeah, and we still need to figure out the name of this thing. I don't know. Naming is hard, but I'll figure it out by next week, right? And
sounds good.
See you next week for that experience. And thanks so much for talking to us, Zoe. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.